Hey, this is Jaryd Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And in this episode, I'm speaking with Greg Mercer, who is the founder of Jungle Scout, which is the most trusted tool for finding, launching, and selling products on Amazon, and also growing your Amazon business. Now, this episode is jam-packed with great content around what Greg's motivation was for getting out of his office job and how he moved from being a young entrepreneur, buying into the American type style dream of having an office corporate job, and then realizing that wasn't for him very quickly and moved back into entrepreneurship. We'll also talk a bit about how his journey is very synergistic to mine as well, wanting to travel and be an entrepreneur and all that sort of stuff, which I'm sure is going to relate to all of you listening. And we talk about how Greg got started with Jungle Scout. And we talk about what metrics you need to know to find which are the best products to sell on Amazon and how to find those products with those certain metrics. And we talk about the 3 best ways to grow your Amazon business. We also talk about how to get customers off Amazon and get their email addresses and also their business off Amazon as well, and start serving them off Amazon far better and giving them far more value. We also talk about how to beat SOS, which is shiny object syndrome, and a little bit about mindset as an entrepreneur and what we need to do to have the right mindset and stay in our lane, stay focused, and to get results as an entrepreneur. So this is such an amazing episode, and I'm sure you're going to love it. But before we get stuck into this episode, I don't want you to go rush off and buy some sort of Amazon business so you can start making money and growing it. First, you need to know how to do the due diligence. And I give my due diligence framework 2.0 away for free, which everybody's raving about, and will help you with knowing what to look for when buying websites, including questions to ask the seller and everything that you need to know to buy that website whilst minimizing and reducing risk. So go to my site, buyingonlinebusinesses.com, go to the resources tab, and you can get that free resource. And there's more there too for you to check out too. Now let's jump into the episode. Today's episode is brought to you by us here at Buying Online Businesses. Let me ask, if you have an online business, have you ever thought of selling it? We're a thriving community of website investors who are cashed up and hungry to buy your online business. Our members are well trained in online business due diligence, allowing you a quick sale of your business. And because we only want to provide a better service to our members, we're opening up the doors to allow you to sell your online business to us free of charge. So if you have an online business that's making a minimum net profit of $5,000 per year and you're thinking of selling your business, head over to our Sell Your Business page at buyingonlinebusinesses.co/sell your business. There will be a link in the show notes, and you can also find this page from our site, buyingonlinebusinesses.com. That's buyingonlinebusinesses.com. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. Today we're speaking with Greg Mercer from Jungle Scout. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for jumping on.
Absolutely. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you as well. I've followed a little bit of what you've been doing, and like I said before we hit the record buttons, listened to a bit of your call with Mike Jackness, and I see that we got some mutual friends in common. And yeah, it's been really cool what you've done with Jungle Scout and your journey. So congrats on that. And I think you should be super proud. You're doing justice to the FBA space, the Amazon space, which is great.
Thank you very much. Those are kind words.
So I went through and checked out a bit of your bio and stuff and saw how you got started. And I can see that you were a young entrepreneur as well, young at heart. And that's very similar to me. Like, I really related to a little bit about what you were saying, is that you started out as a young entrepreneur and then you got into the civil engineer game, and you went through the study process, and then you finally mustered up the courage to go back to the entrepreneurship thing again. And I think that's fascinating, and how we can have a dream, it can get squashed, or we can buy into somebody else's dream. And then we finally work out that's not the right thing for us, and then get into what really is like going to help us shine and use our superpowers. And for me, that happened as well, right? Like, I was like, I really wanted to be like, my thing when I had an ego when I was young was like, I want to be wealthy. And I went down the track of like, I'm going to study and get a really good job and be a high level accountant. And what happened was I just found that I wasn't. Like, I bought into this belief that I wasn't smart enough by the teachers putting me in lower grades of English and maths. And so I went off and became a tradie for about 10 years. And then through that really hated that journey and just looked at older people on the job site and thought, I do not want to be doing that when I'm 50 years old.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. So how did you get to the point where you were doing civil engineering and going like, this really isn't the thing that I should be doing? Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
I think it was actually kind of similar to yours. I think I was in the office. Honestly, I'd only had the job for like a few weeks. And I think I was looking at the people who had been there for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. And I was like, the more I kind of got to know them, I was like, man, this is just not what I want with my life. And just my whole life, I had this entrepreneurial spirit. So I wanted to kind of pursue that much more. There wasn't exactly like one moment that would really click for me. Instead, it was more so just like, this is not where I want my life to go.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us that start a job, we let that, like we see where people are at in their life and we can kind of relate. But I think that people go, well, they just accept like, that's what I'm going to be. That's where I'm going to be at in 20 to 30 years. And I just want to share a message to people. It doesn't have to be that way. Like, yes, it's hard to be an entrepreneur, but like, don't accept that. Like, if you really have this deep down desire, like I guess you did, Greg, of like, I can't, I mean, you were quite young in terms of like how young you were and green you were in the workspace. For me, I just, I accepted it far too long, in my opinion. I think people do that for a longer period.
I think it's a good message to people. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking about that, and it's like, man, I've been doing this job I don't like for too long. An exercise that kind of helps me is think about the worst case scenario. So like in that particular scenario, I was quitting my job. My wife was also quitting her job. It's like, okay, what's the worst case scenario that happens here? And for us, it was like, we both have parents that love us. And it's really nice that we could always like move back in with our parents. Like we were married, so that would kind of suck. But like, all right, that's not the world's worst case scenario. Or, I was scared to quit my job because I was like, I'll never be able to get another job again. It's like, no, like I think I could just quit for 6 months and I could probably get the same job back or, another very similar job. So once you kind of start going through these exercises, even like the worst things that you can think of, it's like, all right, like I'm willing to bet this when the downside is moving back in with my parents for a few months and the upside is a life that I really enjoy and love.
I love that explanation because I teach people how to buy website businesses. When we get to the point where we're like about to buy a business, I always get them to think of like, what's the absolute worst case scenario? And if you're okay with that worst case scenario for the potential upside, then it could be a great investment. And that's not just in a business, but with your whole life and your time and what you're doing. And I think that's a great message. So thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. And so Jungle Scout, how did this whole thing come about? You tried a few little things and you fiddled around. You're like, all right, let's get into this Amazon space. How did that come about? What was your motivation for going down the Amazon route or Jungle Scout route, should I say?
Yeah. So back when I was a civil engineer, my goal was to make as much money, online. I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. I was like, man, I want to travel around the world and work. And we ended up doing that for a few years. It was awesome. But I was like, I just want to make as much money as I'm making as a civil engineer, which wasn't that money. It was much. It was like the first job you get kind of out of college. So it's not even that high paying. I was like, as soon as I make that, I'm going to quit. And I tried a whole bunch of different stuff, really just like fiddling and all kinds of stuff. Some things didn't work at all. Other things I was making like $50 a month on or whatever. And the first one that kind of stuck for me, or I started making some serious money or picking up some good traction, was selling physical products on Amazon through their FBA program. So I was importing goods from China, private labeling them, sending them into Amazon's fulfillment centers. And I think a lot of people listening to your show are probably familiar with FBA, but what's so cool about it is they store all the goods for you and then they pick, pack, and ship it when someone places an order. Not to mention, it's also the world's largest marketplace. So there's tons of traffic already on there looking for goods. So it was pretty sweet because I had this physical products business, but I could run it from anywhere in the world that I wanted because I was shipping the goods straight from China into the Amazon distribution centers. And I mean, there were products that I would sell thousands of them before I even saw one myself or held it in my hand. That's really the kind of how it started. At the time, I didn't care, how I was making the money.
Was this so you could travel and make money as you go around?
Yeah, it was so I could travel. And it was also just so I could get away from the 9 to 5 and devote all day, every day for just like working for myself. So traveling was a really sweet bonus. And then the other thing that was nice to kind of stack on top of that is we started for the first year in like really low cost areas of the world. So the nice thing about that is there's not as much money pressure because you can have a good quality of life for much less expensive than what you would in the States.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of entrepreneur hub in Vietnam and Singapore and Thailand and stuff like that. I actually went down the same route. I was living in Egypt when I first started my online business and started the drop shipping route. I didn't use the Amazon platform and that big pool of buyers, which I probably should have at that stage, but led down to a different route where we're at now. But I think it's great to relate to the 4-hour work week. There's so many people that are listening to this that really gravitate towards the 4-hour work week and the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. Have you gone through the Rich Dad Poor Dad book?
Yeah, those are both two great books for like just thinking about the world a little bit differently or like altering mindset a little bit.
I'm all about that paradigm shift as well. So yeah, that's great. So you really wanted to just out of the 9 to 5 and be able to have that lifestyle, which is awesome. And then it blew up, which is good. And so you just lent more into growing your business through some of the, whether they're off-market tools or like tools that you were using that you thought maybe I could package this up into a better system?
So for the listeners who aren't familiar with Jungle Scout, it is a platform to help manage your e-commerce business. So we do everything from what we're best known for is like the e-commerce intelligence or understanding what's selling online or consumer behavior online. And then we also do some stuff for like managing and optimizing your Amazon business. And Jungle Scout started with a Chrome extension. A lot of people are still, or that's how they kind of know of Jungle Scout as our Chrome extension. It's a really simple tool that just whenever you're on an Amazon page, you can click the Chrome extension. There's a little pop-up and it shows you how many units per month those goods are selling. So this is obviously really valuable because you can determine what the demand is and what's selling on Amazon. Now, back when I started my Amazon business, there wasn't anything like this that existed. This was in 2013. FBA was like really just starting to pick up steam. If you Googled how to sell on Amazon, there wasn't really even anything there. So there was like very few software tools, like very little material to kind of help you learn how to do it. What I recognized after I launched a couple dozen products is there was a direct correlation with how much demand there was and how successful the products were. And this seems like really simple as we say it today, but back then when I had no idea to determine what people were buying, like I didn't really know. I didn't know what was selling on Amazon. And what I did is I developed at the time very simple models to estimate how well the products were selling based off something called the bestseller rank. So this is pretty cool because now all of a sudden I had like a pretty decent estimate of how well all the products on Amazon were selling. And that was obviously a really powerful thing because then I could then go for the products that had quite a bit of demand or people were searching for. So that was kind of like a turning point in my Amazon business. And then just from like the entrepreneurial spirit, I think especially a lot of young entrepreneurs do this. They want to like start lots of businesses. I was like, man, this would be really cool if I, packaged up this extension and sold it. Don't know how to write software, or if I packaged up these models that I created into an extension and sold it. So I didn't know how to write software, like just didn't know anything about it. But I was like, man, let's just give this a try. My goal was to sell enough of them to break even on what it cost me to hire a developer to build the first extension. Yeah, it was really cool. In the first month, it also picked up quite a bit of traction and kind of the rest is history.
It's so cool that it picked up traction because it's helping so many people not just start Amazon businesses. Like you're saying like, hey, I want to know what products to sell because that's a huge, like you say, it's a volume game, right? Like you can have a smaller percentage than say selling info products and some other things online and digital products. But you've got that pool of buyers on Amazon, which we know is the biggest marketplace online. You sell a large volume of those things and that makes up for it. And I think the tool's great for that and finding those products that, the top sellers or they're moving big volumes and stuff like that. But you've gone into helping people grow their Amazon businesses as well, which is what I'm fascinated about and love to dig into more. Because there's so many people, like you said, you explained a bit about what FBA is. A lot of people listening to this know FBA or they own FBA businesses. And they're like, Jaryd, how do we scale it? How do we grow it? Also, like I teach a bit about how to buy them. But what would you say some of the like key tools are that if people to join Jungle Scout could use to bolt on to their business or their SOPs to start, selling more products or getting better product listings and descriptions and things like that? or even email. There's so many things. I've had a look and
Yeah.
it's just, there's a lot there.
There's a lot in there. We'll talk about kind of the functionality that's probably relevant for the most people listening right now. And that would be the product research functionality. So in this functionality, it's going to help you spot opportunities. So spot good products to sell on Amazon, whether it's your first product or you're expanding your product line, or maybe even have a whole catalog of products that you're selling on your own e-commerce store. And you want to understand whether or not those also sell well on Amazon. So the place that I'd recommend starting, there's this area inside the Jungle Scout web application called the Opportunity Finder. And just like the name says, it just helps you find these opportunities on Amazon. And if we think about it from a high level, is locating the niches that have like the highest differential between demand and competition. So it tries to find you the niches, or helps you find the niches that have the most demand with the least amount of competition. It's like the biggest difference there, because that's kind of ultimately what you're going for. Now, some people are going to be interested in only selling a certain type of product or like a certain category. So there's a whole bunch of different filters that you can kind of adjust to find something in the area that you're looking for. But it's really cool because it's going to show you like how well that particular niche does on Amazon.
Yeah, I love it. I'm pretty curious about your method or thinking or theory as an entrepreneur and a business owner around, how many products to have and where to keep our focus. Because a lot of people say to me, Jaryd, I'm going to buy a website business and it's in the e-com space. I'm like, okay, cool. How do you think you're going to grow? Or like, what do you want to do to grow? And they say, I'm just going to add more products in, just get more products on and, I'll sell more stuff. But what I find is that can take away from having focus on the best products and doing more volumes and making sure that you have better PPC ads, better listings, photos, descriptions, and really focus on those 2 to 3 or 2 to 5 rather than having, thousands of or hundreds of SKUs. And I see that when there's businesses for sale. I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the website brokers, but I look at some of these FBA businesses and there's so many products there. And I think that's a huge distraction for a first-time buyer or a first-time business owner. Do you think there'd be a happy medium on how many products to focus on before it starts getting too much and we lose focus on what's actually working?
Yeah. So I'll start off by saying that, one of the best ways of growing on Amazon is to launch more SKUs. But as you alluded to, it also really starts to complicate your business, right? If you have a whole bunch of different products, inventory management starts to become a headache, then it really starts to complicate things. The advice that I would give here is specifically on Amazon, there's a little bit diminishing returns with how much work you put into like optimizing your listing, and really the same thing kind of like with your sponsored product spend. So if we think about it, we don't, unlike owning your own e-commerce site where the list is a mile long of all the things that you could do to drive more traffic and optimize your site. And I mean, it's just like never ending. It would be
You've
a
got
never
this
ending
whole
list.
other aspect of business, which is like gaining those pool of buyers with an e-com versus Amazon FBA. Yeah. That's a different story. Yeah.
So it's a whole different story. So with Amazon, there's only so much we can do, right? We can write the description, write the bullet points, and adjust the photos. And we can try different keywords in our title, and we can test different prices and some things like that. But there is a point where it's like, okay, I've split tested a few different images. I kind of chose the best. Like, I believe my bullet points are like well optimized. There gets to be a point where you're kind of maxed out. There's not going to be much more that you can do there. Optimizing your sponsored product spend, that's usually an ongoing thing that you'll kind of be doing forever. But besides that, like you kind of hit a little bit of a peak. So I'd say that you want to try to like achieve that with all your products before you start to expand out to others. I mean, it is a high impact way to sell more. But yeah, so that'd be my advice on how to think about it.
Yeah, I think that's great because, and it's the same with so many aspects in business that people try to do too many things. Like, in my mastermind, for example, sometimes we have people like, oh, should I do this and should I do this and should I do that, and add these things to their to-do list. But what if they were to focus on this one thing and get that done really, really well, and then create a SOP around that and maybe hire a VA to manage that before they take their time and their focus on that other thing? That's exactly what you can do with one certain product with your Amazon business, is get that really nailed, have a good SOP around that, and maybe have a VA manage that, and then come back to you and give you a bit of a review every single fortnight or month or week or whatever it is. I think that's a great way that you explain that, because like the shiny object syndrome's real, right? Like,
yeah,
Yeah. Have you suffered from this? Like, because I think as an entrepreneur, it's like a trait that's just like naturally or an organic thing that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, I still suffer from this.
Me too.
Like a recovering alcoholic. Like, I want to first admit that I still suffer from the shiny object syndrome. But it's also, now that I have like a few more years of experience as an entrepreneur, and one of the things I really enjoy is just kind of like working with like newer entrepreneurs or people kind of just getting started. And just like in general, all entrepreneurs should take their list of like the 50 things that they want to do and try to just choose like 5 or 3 and do them really well. I think that would be much more productive. I remember like in the early days of Jungle Scout, and I wasn't familiar at all how to drive traffic to the website. So, watching every YouTube, listening to tons of podcasts, whatever, on like all the different things. So, I was reading one article about, oh, you have to start blogging. The next article was, oh, you have to start a YouTube channel. The next one is, hey, you should be doing Google AdWords. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's a million different ways to drive traffic to a website. And I remember at the time I would try one for like a week. And then I'd be like, oh man, last week I had 10 visitors. Now I have 15. This isn't working like they said. They said I was going to get 1 million visitors. Like, I'm going to try the next one. Where in reality, if I had just chose 1 or maybe even just 2 like marketing channels to focus on. So for example, if I chose just creating written content and video content or something like that, and I was like, for the next year, I'm just going to master writing content, getting it ranked in Google and driving traffic to my website through that. That would have been much more effective than trying to jump around every few weeks to like the next shiniest best thing.
Yeah, and it's hard. I've suffered from that as well. Like, I've tried written content, video, just audio. Like, now I know what I'm better at and what feels more natural. And I think you can tell now what I'm doing and leaning into more is definitely the podcast. So I think I want to come back to like talking about like in terms of the shiny object syndrome and growing, your FBA business, maybe, leaning into 1 or 2 products to start off with. Say somebody does have an FBA business. What would you say, like, before them going off and like, all right, I can do this to make my listing better, and I can do this to sell more products, and all these things that they see on these YouTube videos of people that have had overnight success of making $1 million in 3 seconds, and then a 15 bullet point to-do list on how to grow your FBA business. If there were like 1 to 2, or maybe even 3 things that an FBA business owner was going to lean into first to, say, start growing or gaining more traction with their products, what would they be?
So I'll give 3 that are all a little bit different. Cool. So the first one I'll start with is listing optimization, and like by far the highest impact thing you can do there is with images. So Jungle Scout actually owns another software tool called Splitly, which A/B tests images. And not here to pitch it, but one of the cool things about it is we work with a whole bunch of sellers and see the results of a whole bunch of different split tests, everything from titles, price, pictures, everything else in between. And by far the images are the highest impact thing. So having good lifestyle images and having a little like competitive matrices on there. And if you can think to yourself, like, what questions would someone have who can't see and hold this product in real life, and answer that question on the pictures, that's going to help. So that's like, from listing optimization, that's what I'd focus on, the photos.
I love knocking off objections with photos and even bullet points. It's just so good.
Yeah, nobody reads. They want to look at the photos.
Yeah.
The next 2 things are like with your sponsored product spend and your inventory management. With sponsored products, so there are paid advertising on Amazon, over the years, it's become more and more important. And I think it's going to continue to trend that way in the future. And this is a really high impact thing for your business because it's usually a very large line item, like on people's overall expenses for selling on Amazon. Like, it's not uncommon for 1/3 of your expenses or maybe more just to be spent on PPC. So like very small incremental improvements there can make a big difference. So I would definitely recommend focusing on that. And then the last one, the inventory management, this seems like the most kind of simple or boring or least sexy thing to be focusing on. Yeah. But it's probably the number one thing that kind of like decreases overall sales of any FBA seller, because it's pretty easy to not focus on it because it's kind of boring and I don't know, like who wants to send an email reordering or whatever. But running out of stock's very costly. You're missing out on all those sales on all those days. And then also though, having too much inventory is quite costly because you're paying for storage fees for it. So it's a pretty like finicky thing.
Mm.
And I believe that most people don't devote enough time to it. And the result is significant losses for the business.
I guess you could be spending on marketing and not understand or not realize that you are slowly running out of products, and you could be spending on marketing with nothing there. So
I
that
think it
sucks.
happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Last kind of thing I want to talk about is email marketing with an Amazon business. Like, we know it's a tough thing. So I know that you've got some, in Jungle Scout, you've got a feature that helps people sort of do some email stuff. I like to pull people off platforms to make sure I own the list. And I, reiterate that through a lot of my content. And it's a risk minimization strategy that I help people instill into most of the businesses they buy. Talk to me about the email marketing and how you get around that, like with Amazon, because it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest downside of Amazon is almost impossible to pull customers off of Amazon and get their contact information, kind of like turn them into your customers. Amazon doesn't want you to do that. They make it really, really difficult to do that. So that is something that you just have to accept to a certain level. The email functionality that's built into Jungle Scout, the primary use case for it is asking for reviews. So Amazon is cool with that. You can, in an unbiased way, ask or remind the buyer to leave you a review. So that's the primary use case for that, because I think we all probably can guess how important reviews are on Amazon. So getting buyers off Amazon, I mean, you can do little things like put little inserts into the packaging, encouraging them to come to your website to enter a raffle or enter their warranty or like little things like that. But yeah, I think you also just have to accept to a certain extent that this is definitely one of the biggest downsides of Amazon. There's tons of upsides, but this is definitely one of the big downsides.
I guess with a product that is, that you need on a regular basis, like say shaving or toothpaste or toilet paper or something like that, if you're selling that on Amazon, taking them off the platform may be easier with offers, and whether it's a membership or pay per month to get this, or, on your next order of whatever it is. I think it's probably easier with certain products, would you say?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, pretty much your only way to communicate with the buyer is going to be through some kind of insert or like on the packaging. So you can think
Mm.
like, okay, if I was ordering new razor blades for my shaver and I opened it up and right on top I saw it like get your first order free from gregsrazorblades.com and sign up for the subscription. You can envision that people may, take advantage of that and go do that. But for a lot of products, it's probably going to be pretty tough to think of something.
Yeah, for sure. Mainly the consumables, but I would say also product development. Like, if you've got an amazing product, I know people love brands. Like, if somebody gets like my partner buys a skincare product, and she likes it, like she is buying that until she finds
Yep.
something better. Like, she's loyal to that. So I think that's a good shout out to those selling those sorts of things on Amazon. I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you and learn more about who you are, what you've been doing, what you're up to, and what service you're providing for everybody with FBA businesses. So thank you so much. And everybody listening, I'll be putting show notes and links to both Jungle Scout and what was the other one, Greg?
Splitly.
Splitly. Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks so much. So I guess one parting piece of advice, like what would you say to people that are looking to get into Amazon, or for any entrepreneur really?
Like I said earlier, I started selling on Amazon 7 years ago. And right now is actually like the best time that I can remember that are like where there's the biggest differential between essentially supply and demand. So Amazon sales have gone up a lot in the past few months. The demand hasn't caught up. There hasn't really been enough new sellers or even enough inventory. So this is like
That's
probably
cool.
the largest differential that I can ever remember. So like if you've been kind of on the fence or thinking about getting into Amazon, like now is definitely the time. Like COVID hooked up Amazon. It's time.
Yeah, that's so true when you think about how many more people are buying online through Amazon and going, hey, I need this, and just not enough supply.
Yeah,
That's
it
a
is.
great shout out.
it essentially increased like 50%. So, in just a few weeks period, 50% more sales on Amazon, we can imagine is just a huge amount, right? I don't know how many billions of dollars of extra
Yeah.
sales, but it's a good time to get on Amazon.
Yeah. Online in general as well. Like
Totally.
just, yeah, like if you can get on Amazon, use that pull first and then start to pull people off and build your own brand. I think that's a great way to go.
Yep. Right on.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Greg. Everybody listening, thank you for listening. Thanks for listening to the episode. I greatly appreciate it. Now, before you go rush off to another episode, it's mine or somebody else's, I want you to think of 2 to 3 people who are looking to make money online, looking to start an Amazon business, or already have an Amazon business and want to grow it. Please do them a massive favor and share this episode with them so they can get some awesome knowledge from Greg and some little tidbits, advice, and going to help them on their journey in Amazon. So thanks so much, everybody. And thanks again, Greg.
Take care.